Welcome to EDU World Space.
So in this video, we're going to work through question 94 from chapter 20, which says halogens form a variety of covalent compounds with each other. For example, chlorine and fluorine form the compounds ClF, ClF3, and ClF5. Predict the molecular structure, including bond angles, for each of these three compounds. So this problem is actually not too complicated, mostly because halogens, being only one electron short of the noble gas electron configuration, tend to only like to make one bond. So for example, with ClF, both our chlorine and fluorine atoms bring 7 electrons, so we have 14 electrons total. And we can use all of them by just bonding chlorine to fluorine with a single bond and then filling in our octets. And that uses up all of our electrons. And since we have only 2 atoms, our molecule is linear and our bond angle is 180 degrees. ClF3 is slightly more interesting. So chlorine and fluorine both bring 7 electrons each, so we have 28 electrons total. If we bond each of our fluorine atoms with a single bond to our chlorine atom and then fill in our octets, we have 6 electrons left over. So after we fill in the octets in our fluorine atoms, we can put 3 lone pairs of electrons on our chlorine atom in the center, and that uses up all 28 of our electrons. So now we know that we have 3 bonded atoms around our central atom and 3 lone pairs. So that tells us that our molecule is going to be T-shaped. So what exactly does that look like? That looks like 1 fluorine bonded above the chlorine atom and 1 bonded below. And then in a plane around the chlorine atom, you have 3 substituents. 2 of them are electron pairs and 1 of them is the 3rd fluorine atom. So the bond angles between fluorine, chlorine, fluorine are 90 degrees. Or for the one that's above and below, 180 degrees. What about ClF5? Well, in ClF5, both chlorine and fluorine bring 7 electrons, so we have a total of 42 electrons. If we just attach each of our fluorine atoms to our chlorine atom with a single bond and then fill in the octets on our fluorine atoms, we use up 40 electrons. So our last 2 electrons we're going to put on our chlorine atom. So now we know that our chlorine atom, our central atom, has 5 bonded atoms and 1 lone pair. That tells us that we're going to have a square pyramidal geometry. So what does that look like? That looks like 1 fluorine atom bonded above the chlorine atom and then 4 fluorine atoms around the chlorine atom in a square. And then below the chlorine atom, we have our last lone pair of electrons. So all of the bond angles in this case are 90 degrees.